Right, okay, so I wanted to continue on the sort of educational sort of videos on around business areas, and springtime is always a good time to look at marketing. So I have a friend of mine called Joe. Joe runs a company called Be Gallant, and they create custom websites and help with brand design. So today is going to be all about marketing strategy, and I'm going to pick Joe's brains on this, and we're all going to be really wise by the end of it. So
no pressure.
No, not at all. No. Right, so Joe, do you want to just sort of say where you're based?
Yeah, so I'm in the little town of Snodland, which, if you've not heard of it, sounds like it's made up and is something out of Noddy, but it's in between Rochester and Maidstone.
Cool. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Joe, they can find you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, LinkedIn connect. Or through the Be Gallant website.
Good. Right, so I've got a few questions, so I'm going to go straight in for the jugular. Why does a company need a marketing strategy, and what do they need to look at in particular when they're trying to make one?
Yeah, so pretty broad question. Could go down a lot of routes with it. But essentially, when I think of marketing, I think of two things. I think of trying to get in front of people, and then trying to persuade them that you're worth spending time or money on. Essentially, that's usually what we're talking about with the business. So in terms of a strategy, obviously there are loads and loads of different ways that you can do that. There are loads of different avenues we can go down with marketing. So it's a case of knowing where to invest our time and money in to get those best returns. The return on investment is, marketers' favorite or least favorite word, depending on how well they're performing that month. So yeah, that's why to have a strategy, really.
Okay. And how what do the people need to have in a strategy? What sort of elements do they need within that, do you think?
I think probably the key thing, and it's a thing which people will often skip over, is just to really think and nail down into who you're targeting. So you might call that target audience, target customer, target market. Essentially, you need to nail down what exactly you're providing, who you're providing it to, and from there you can then think about how best to reach those people. Because if you've got a target market where you're getting them to spend, £15 on a product one time, versus someone where you're going to get them to spend tens of thousands of pounds as a business to business sort of thing, you're going to have a really different approach to reaching those people. So starting with that target market, and then nailing down into the different channels you're going to use to reach them, and then from there you go into the more granular strategy of how you're going to use those channels. So what messages you're going to put out, what they'll look like, what they'll sound like, what they're actually going to say, where you're going to send people, what action do you want people to take from your marketing materials.
All right. Okay. How about unique selling point? Is that really important?
I think it's pretty important, but at the same time, there are so many businesses in the world. There aren't that many that have something completely unique. So I think that what's probably more important is getting across your character, your personality, building that trust, and then showing how you can solve a problem for people. It might be that you're not the only person in the world, shock horror, who could provide that same solution to the problem, but you want to persuade them that you're the best one that they've come across, and that you can do that job for them.
Okay, good. And so you do a lot of brand work with people. How does a company go about working on their brand and improving that?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is to clarify what we mean by branding, because it's a word which is thrown around quite a lot. If we think of, the only other sector I can think of where we use the word branding, apart from, Joe Brown, the comedian, we think of cattle branding, and we're literally putting that mark and emblazoning it on the cow so that if someone comes across it, it's very clear who it belongs to. And that's quite a useful thing to think of, I think. You're thinking that every time someone interacts with you or your company or one of your employees, whether it's online or not, there's just making your mark on it, helping people to know that it's you that they're talking to. So really, branding encompasses all of that. It's those touch points that you have with people. Now, sometimes that might be as literal as actually putting your logo on something as if you were branding that cow. But sometimes that might not be necessary. So I see quite a lot that people will put images onto their websites and have their logo in the corner, or on Facebook, for example. And it's overkill because people know that it's you at that point, because you're already on the website, you're on the social media, you've got the company name right there. So a lot of the time it's more about a feeling and a certain sort of tone of voice that just communicates a little bit more in a little bit different way to last time, maybe, of who you are as a company, and again, why you can do what you're saying you can do.
Okay. And so when we're sort of throwing around these kind of phrases, I'm going to throw another one in then. So the ideal client, do we have to have an ideal client in order to create our brand and our message? And
again, I think there's a little bit of that USP thing going on. You know, I certainly have a couple of client types that are ideal for me, but they're by no means my only clients. In the same way that, you know, if you think of a company like Apple, they're selling expensive hardware. Their ideal client might be a sort of mid-level creative who's got a fair bit of money to spend on something. But does that mean they're going to turn away someone who's just heard that Macs are quite cool and they like the idea of getting one? You know, absolutely not. In the same way that any business will often, you know, service business will often step slightly outside of the ideal, whether that's because they're not that busy at the moment or because they want to expand. And so I think that it's helpful thinking of your ideal client. I know in my experience that's helped to shape my marketing and who I'm trying to reach, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to therefore exclude anyone who doesn't sit within that window.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a tool that is useful, but you don't want it to be your master.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the case for a lot of things in marketing, really, especially when people so often are looking for quick wins and sort of little hacks, and the reality is sometimes it just takes a bit longer. And so you don't have to be beholden to something. And if you find that this amazing advice which you've been given isn't working for you, then just move on to something else.
Okay. And probably one final question on that is the message and the tone on communications. How important are they?
Yeah, and I mean, this goes back really to the question of putting together a brand and how to do that, is that you need to consider all of the different elements of it. So often when people hear branding, they think of logos. That logos are really important. Taglines can be important. Colors, fonts, also really important. But then the things which people don't necessarily consider right up front as well. So tone of voice is a really key one. What you sound like, either when you're talking in a video like this, if you're doing guest speaking, or whether it's written words on the page, that's really important because that gives a real flavor of who you are. And I think in some senses that's more important than anything else, because you can waffle on, but if it doesn't resonate with people, then they're probably not gonna stay with you. You know, that building trust is really important, and I think authenticity as well. So if your tone of voice is trying to be something that you're not, people can see through that. So yeah, I think especially for small business owners, we can feel this pressure that we have to sound a certain way or look a certain way. But actually, a lot of the time, what's connecting with people is when you are you, and you're most effective in your marketing when that is what shines through and sort of sells to people.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's very good words. Good. I guess it's about sort of just trying to put forward your best side, isn't it? Really, of who you are. But so you're being honest, but you're packaging it in the best possible way.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, consistency is important. Exactly. I mean, consistency is important in that. I mean, it's something that I try to be consistent in the brands that I put out, whether that's my own brand or other people's. Having some guidelines that you can stick to is helpful. But again, you can be too much of a slave to those things that you start to sort of miss the point of them.
Yeah. Well, look, Joe, thanks for that. I think we're going to have to wrap up because we're only allowed up to 10 minutes on these videos. So, but thank you for your time. And if anyone has any further questions about strategy or websites or brand design, then feel free to contact Joe.